G'day, my name's Lloyd Grollum and I'm the Aussie Pastor, and I want to give you a warm welcome to our third program in this series. Can you believe it? We're already into program 3 and I'm enjoying it, and I hope and pray you are too. And this one is a beauty. Who is this man, Jesus? It means a lot to me, this, because Jesus, he's not only my God, but he's my friend. And so I'm talking to you today about someone who is very, very close to me. But before I get into the subject, I want to tell you a little story as way of introduction. A couple of weeks ago, I went to Channel 9 Studios with my wife Lizzie and my mate and my producer-director Hunty to record a show with some of the big shots in there. Now, what I did in there, it's a secret. And I can't tell you yet, but it's really exciting. Am I right, Hunty?
Absolutely.
It's really exciting. And when I was in there, I met Carl Stefanovic. Yep, Carl. Did I say that right, Andrew?
Yes,
Stefanovic. And I tell you what, he interviewed me, and he is a really bright guy. He's really up there. But before I got to meet him, I had to go into wardrobe. Now, my wife had dressed me immaculately in the best clothes I had. And I go in there, you know, and just before I got up there, a girl comes in. I think she must be the clothing director or something or other. And she gets me to stand up, and she looks me over, and I could tell she wasn't happy with what she was seeing. Now, I know I'm not the best looking bloke in the world, and I knew my clothes were right, so I knew it must have been me. But it wasn't. It was my clothes. You see, I'd sat in these clothes in the car seat on the way to the studio. And she said, she said, that won't do. You go into that small room, you take your clothes off, I'll give you a robe, and we'll go and we'll re-iron them. So I went into the room. I thought the robe would be a long robe, you know, but it wasn't. It was one of these little short things. So I get into it. I thought, oh, what am I going to do now? Well, she comes and takes my clothes. She said, now you go into the waiting room where all the other guests for this show are, and I was the only one in this little short robe. It was terrible. It was traumatic. Then she comes back in, she looks at my shoes, and she says, are you going to have to take those shoes off? They're not good enough either. And they gave me another pair of shoes. And here's the point of this story. Even though I was immaculately dressed, it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for them. You know what? And I'll tell that story as a bit of a joke as we start today, because I actually ironed my own shirt today. And Hunty and Wally, they're not happy. So if you look at my shirt and it looks a little crinkly, it's because I was the clothing director today. But I'm glad you're here, and this program is fabulous. It is wonderful. You know why it's so wonderful? Because Jesus is wonderful. Let's get into it. Tyler Wolf. He's an 8-year-old kid. This story is 15 years old. And together with his mother and Samaritan Purse. Now, if you're an Aussie, you've probably never heard of them, but they're an aid organisation. And what they do is every Christmas they send shoe boxes all around the world to the developing world to poor kids so that they can get Christmas presents. So Tyler with his mother, they decide 15 years ago that they're going to go and get some presents and fill a shoe box up, give it to Samaritan Purse, and Samaritan Purse is going to send it to some country. They don't know which one. So he goes. He shops with his mother, he fills his shoebox up, he writes a little note to whoever's going to get it, and he puts a picture of himself in it with a cowboy hat. You can see the picture. That's him. And he takes it into Samaritan Purse, and of course they post it away. Well, it ends up in the Philippines with this little girl. Her name is Joanna. She's 6 years old, and she's cute, eh? That's a picture of her with the shoebox that she got from America from this boy, Tyler. Well, she was just thrilled. It made her day, it made her week, it made her year. In fact, it impacted her so deeply that she never forgot the gift or the little boy that sent it to her. 15 years later, she decides to get on Facebook and see if she can find Tyler. Now, Facebook is an incredible platform, let me tell you, for finding old friends. I've found many old friends on Facebook myself. Well, you wouldn't believe it, but she found him and she friend requested him. But Tyler, he saw the friend request, he didn't know who she was, and it took him 6 months to accept the request. Now, I don't know what's wrong with this guy. If I'm a young man and I get a friend request from a pretty girl, I wouldn't hesitate. Well, this modern generation, they're slower than us older guys. I wouldn't have hesitated. Well, finally he accepts her friend request. And they begin to talk. And Joanna says, hey, I think 15 years ago, you sent me a present through Samaritan Purse for Christmas. I think it came from you. Did you do that? And he thinks. And he says, I think I did. She says, I think it's from you. And he got really excited. Really? I've met this little girl who's now a big girl who I sent this present to. Wow. And they start to talk. And after a few days, he tells his dad, Mum, hey, I've met this girl that I sent, remember, Mum, 15 years ago through Samaritan Purse? She said, yeah, I've met her. And Mum said, well, be careful, Tyler. It may not be her. So he goes back, he's a little more sober now, and he writes to her again. He says, how do I know it was you? Are you sure? And she writes back and says, well, you know what? I have a picture of the little boy who sent me the present. He said, send it to me. And so she sent him a picture of an 8-year-old boy in a cowboy hat, and it was him. He was so excited. And you can imagine, so began quite a good friendship. And they would talk once a week and moved to twice a week and 3 times until they were talking every single day on Facebook. Praise God for Facebook. Eventually he thinks, I've got to go see this girl. So he buys a ticket from Oregon to the Philippines. It's a long way. And he flies to the Philippines to see Joanna. He says on the plane, just before it landed, he was so scared. His heart was beating. And Joanna says, yeah, my heart was beating too. And they met physically in person for the first time. It was a good meeting. And it confirmed what they both knew, that they were already in love. It's a beautiful story. Over the next 12 months or so, he went back 3 times. And eventually, you wouldn't believe it, he gets her, he takes her back to America, and at his parents' place in the backyard, they were married. Come together, and they're married. And this is a miracle story. How God brought 2 young people together. And man, I've seen the video. Guy's got tears in his eyes, Tyler, as he looks at his beautiful, and she's beautiful, and he's handsome. Looks at his beautiful bride, tears streaming down his face. And he said, God brought her to me. You know what? I'm hoping for a similar love story for you. But it's not between a man and a woman. It's between a man or a woman and God. And just as God worked a miracle for Tyler and Joanna, and he brought them together, I'm praying that he'll work a miracle for you tonight. For you right now, as we share this program, I'm praying he'll work a miracle for you, and that this will be the beginning of something very, very special. So Jesus, my God and my friend. I like saying that. I'm telling you tonight, Jesus is my friend. Who is he? Who is he? If you're ever going to look at serving him and following him, you need to know who he is. Now look at the earth. Isn't that a beautiful picture? It's about, I'm a young earth believer. The Bible says we live on a young earth. The earth is about 6,000 years old. Now hold that thought for a moment. My grandmother, she died just before she was 101. I used to ask my Grandma, because I want to know more about her. Her age was a part of her identity. I used to say, Grandma, how old are you? And she used to say to me, and she'd ruffle my little blonde head, don't you worry about it, son. I'm old enough. Well, as I said, she died just before she was 101, and I miss her. I miss her so much. But the world, it's about 6,000 years old. How old is Jesus? Look at this text with me. John chapter 1, verse 1. Before anything else existed, there was Christ with God. He has always been alive and is himself God. Well, the first thing I want to show you and tell you from this text is that Jesus is older than the earth. More than that, his age goes into affinity. Now listen to me, and listen to me carefully. Jesus, and this is going to boggle your mind, Jesus has no beginning. He has no beginning. So you go back 1,000 years, Jesus was alive. Go back 10,000 years, that's before the world existed, Jesus was alive. Go back 100,000, a million, 100 million, 100 million years ago, Jesus was alive. There has never been a time in the past where he has not been alive, except when he died for 3 days and lay in the ground after the cross. Now my little daughter, when she was a little one, she used to say to me, Dad, what's the biggest number in the world? And I used to say, a gazillion. Well, you know what? A gazillion years ago, Jesus was alive. He has always been, because he is God. But look at the rest of the text. John chapter 1, verse 3. He created everything there is. Nothing exists that he did not make. Jesus is the creator of the world. Now, I am a very blessed man. I have travelled. Now, I haven't travelled as much as Hunty, our director. But man, I have travelled and I have seen the world. I have been to Yosemite National Park in Northern California. First time I went there, I thought I was in heaven. It is beautiful. And if you ever get a chance to go to America, you got to go to Yosemite. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. Spectacular. Made by Jesus. Then I went to Europe, to the Dolomites, Italy. Wow, mountains taller than any mountain I thought could ever exist. They seem to just go up into the sky forever. Made by Jesus. Then I go to Fiji and I worked for 3 months building a camp called Doomba on this beautiful beach. Oh, I used to sit on that beach under a palm tree eating the lunch that my mum and dad, they were living in Fiji at the moment, I was visiting and building. So she made me on this beautiful white sandy beach under a palm tree, crystal clear water, spectacular, beautiful, made by Jesus. I lived in New Zealand for 3 years, 4 years actually. What a great time. Beautiful people. I don't know why you Aussies, Australians, I'm one of you. I don't know why we spend so much money going to Europe when we can go to New Zealand. It is stunning and it is made by Jesus. You can go to Scotland, and I've been there. Made by Jesus. England, I remember when I went to Europe. I had a great time in Europe. Finally came time to go over to England. I thought, yeah, England's going to be okay, but about the best I knew about the Poms was we kept beating them up in cricket. We kept beating them up in football. In fact, in just about every sport. Oh, sorry, if there's some English people, we love you. Most of us come from, or our ancestors come from over there. But that's what I knew about England. I wasn't expecting much, but man, when I got there, what a beautiful country. I went to the Lakes District. Oh, wow. And you know what? Made by Jesus. And then you come back to Australia, our beautiful country. And isn't it beautiful? The outback, dry, dusty, red, red, red. If you fly over Australia and you look out the aeroplane window, all you can see is red. Oh, it is beautiful. Made by Jesus. You go up the Fraser Island where I spent a lot of my youth. What a place. This Lake Mackenzie. If you haven't been to Fraser, you Aussies, go there. I used to swim in Lake Mackenzie. You could see underwater, hundreds of metres, it's that clear, and it's fresh water, and you could drink it as you're swimming underwater. Incredible. Made by Jesus. The Australian Alps. People think that Australia has no snow. It's not true. There's more snow here than in Switzerland. That is the truth. Made by Jesus. The Barrier Reef. Oh, spectacular. Beautiful, biggest reef in the world, just off the coast of Australia, made by, custom made, handmade by Jesus. Look at this text. Christ himself is the creator who made everything in heaven and earth, the things we can see and the things we can't. The spirit world with its kings and kingdoms, its rulers and its authorities, all were made by Christ for his own use and by his glory. Jesus, I want you to get this today. Jesus made everything in the natural world. Those grand old trees you see when you go to the park here in Sydney, made by Jesus. That beautiful ocean, sometimes it can be a wild beast, a dangerous beast. Other times it's beautiful and smooth and calm, made by Jesus. The Australian deserts, the deserts over in Africa, made by Jesus. The mountains that go up into the air, into the sky, made by Jesus. This little fella, he's a bull ant. I have them out the front of my place. Wow. Have you ever been bitten by one of them? Bang! They're made by Jesus. these little tadpoles. I'm a kid, I used to play with tadpoles. You know what? They turn into frogs, made by Jesus. Elephants. I was in Africa. Would you believe it? Yeah, this is the truth. I was in my car with a group of young people. We're over in Africa. We're in Kruger National Park, and we got chased by one of these huge elephants. I wasn't thinking it at the time, but the fact is, made by Jesus. This boy, he's an Australian wedge-tail eagle. I have two living just up on the cliff over the road from my farm. You know their wingspan, the Aussie wedge-tail eagle, is almost 3 meters. They are one of the grandest birds God ever made, and they are fierce. I have seen on YouTube, told you I'm a YouTube freak, I have seen these birds take goats and small calves and small animals and foxes. They are incredibly strong. In fact, about a year ago, 2016 it was, a couple of years ago, there was a kid, he was up at one of these wildlife parks in Darwin. There was an Aussie wedge-tail eagle there. He was supposed to be semi-tame, and in the show, he was hungry. He tried to take this kid out for a meal. You see the picture as he grabs him and tries to fly off with him. Incredible birds, fierce birds, made by Jesus. In fact, Jesus, when it comes to the natural world, he made everything. You know what? He made you too. He made you too. Let me tell you just one more thing about this friend of mine, Jesus. This is a really important point, and it's a point that's been running through the program already as a theme, and you might have picked it up. But I want to take you back to a prophecy, a prophecy from a man named Isaiah. Oh, he is one of the great biblical prophets. He is a giant. He lived 800 years before Jesus. That's a long time. And God gave him a vision about Jesus. Yeah, he did. And this is what God told Isaiah to say. Let's look at it. And this is a very famous Bible passage. Isaiah 9 verse 6. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. These will be his royal titles: Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God. That's the one I want you to know. The Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Isaiah 9 verse 6. Now there has been in the history of the world a lot of men, kings usually, who have set themselves up as gods and demanded worship. The pharaohs, they actually believed, and the people did too, that they were gods and they were worshipped as gods. But you know what? They're all dead. And God, he don't die. Jesus is alive, they're dead. Nebuchadnezzar, one of my favourite characters in all the Bible and history. He was a great king. A few years ago I was in Berlin at the Pergamon Museum. They've got the Ishtar Gate there. Wow, this is a gate that was in the wall of Babylon. Daniel the prophet, he's one of the most famous prophets in all the Bible. He used to walk under the Ishtar Gate. The Germans went over, would you believe it, to Iraq where ancient Babylon was. They dug this gate up, well, not all of it. They dug a little bit of it up. They brought it back and they built the little bit they had, and then they finished it with their own materials. And there it is in the Pergamon Museum. Walk under it. Well, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, he believed he was a god, and the people were to worship him. And you go through history. It's there all the way down through history. Kings and potentates and rulers and emperors claiming the prerogatives of God, from local kings to great kings that had vast empires, claiming to be God, demanding worship. But you know what? In this world, there's only one who can claim the prerogative of God, and that's Jesus Christ. One more story from the Bible. I want to show you this. Those of you who read the Bible, you'll know that one of the most important, well, it's not one of the most important, it's the most important thing in all the Bible is the crucifixion of Jesus. And he died, historical fact. He died for you, he died for me. We're going to talk about that in the program coming in the future. He was in the grave, buried for 3 days, and then he was resurrected. Oh, what an exciting thing it is to serve like I do, a God who lives. Jesus is alive. Now, there was one of his disciples who had problems with this reality. His name was Thomas. Ever heard of Doubting Thomas? That's where it comes from. Thomas couldn't believe he just couldn't believe he was alive. Look at this. John chapter 20. One of the disciples, Thomas, here he is, doubting Thomas, the twin, was not there at the time with the others when they kept telling him, "We have seen the Lord. He's alive. He's resurrected. He's alive. He's alive." He replied, Thomas said, "I won't believe it unless I see the nail wounds in his hands and put my fingers into them and place my hand on his side." So you get what's going on here. Jesus has been resurrected. A lot of disciples have seen him alive. They're excited. Thomas hasn't seen him. And they're saying, "Hey, Thomas, he's alive, he's alive." I reckon I would have been a bit like Thomas. And Thomas is going, "No, I don't believe it unless I can touch the nail scars in his hands and his feet. I'll never believe it." So look what happens. This is a great story. Verse 26. 8 days later, the disciples were together again, and this time Thomas was with them. Hallelujah. The doors were locked, but suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them and greeting them. So you see what's happened now? Thomas and all the disciples are together, and then all of a sudden, Jesus appears miraculously. The doors were locked. He couldn't come through the door. He just appeared. And Jesus is a miraculous God. He does what he wants. He moves through time. He moves through walls. Nothing can hold him back. And he comes and he visits with his disciples, and Thomas is there. Can you imagine Thomas's surprise? Thomas's shock. Look what happens now. Then he said to Thomas, this is Jesus talking to Thomas now, "Put your finger into my hands. Put your hand into my side. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe." And I can imagine Thomas for the first time as he sees the resurrected Lord Jesus. I must have been very emotional. And this is what Thomas said, "My Lord and my God." Thomas recognized Jesus as his Lord and his God. Now look what Jesus says. "You believe, Thomas, because you've seen me." Here's a promise for you and me. "But blessed are those who haven't seen me and believe anyway." Thomas was convicted that Jesus was God, and Jesus affirmed him in that conviction. And just as Thomas was convicted, so too should you. This story has a sequel. It's a sequel 50, 60 plus years in the future. There's one disciple left alive. His name is John. And this story happens on the island of Patmos, just off the Greek coast. Let me tell you what happens. There was an emperor. His name was Nero. Bloodthirsty tyrant. Murdered God's people and many other innocents. One of the worst emperors Rome ever had. He used to get into the Colosseum and they'd have these great games. You know, sometimes they'd even fill that Colosseum up with water and navies would go to battle. Would you believe it? In the Colosseum? It was a place for gladiators, but it was also a place where God's people were martyred in the thousands. We don't know how it happened, but John. Now, this is tradition, but I think there's some truth in it. John finds himself in Rome. He's hauled up before Nero. He's given a choice by Nero, worship me or die. He refuses, and Nero puts him in a pot of boiling oil. Now, this is a picture here of a Thai Buddhist priest in a pot of boiling oil. Is it real? I don't know. Is it a trick? I'm not sure. But the pot of boiling oil that John was put in was real, and he would not burn. He couldn't burn. Nero couldn't kill him, and so he sent him to the island of Patmos, which today is a beautiful resort place, but not back then. It was barren, it was dry, and it was deserted. And it was here on the island of Patmos that John wrote the book of Revelation. Both Jesus and an angel would come to him and share with him in vision, maybe in reality, but in vision at least, what they want him to write down. And this particular prophecy, John is with the angel, a real live angel, and it's about heaven. And this little byplay between the two of them happens. Chapter 22 of Revelation, verse 6. "Then the angel said to me, 'These words are trustworthy and true.' And I, John, saw and heard all these things and fell down to worship the angel who showed them to me. But the angel said, 'No, don't do anything like that.'" And you skip down to the end of the verse and the angel says, "Worship God alone." This angel is big. He's powerful. More powerful than all the armies of the earth combined. He's in the presence of John, and John is blown away, and he falls down on his knees to worship the angel. And the angel says, "No, no, I am not God. Worship God alone. Remember the story of Thomas? Touches the scars in Jesus' hands. And he says, my Lord, my God. He worships him. And Jesus said, blessed are you believe. Believe what? That Jesus is God and deserving of worship. So who is Jesus? Well, I just wanted you to get two things from this program today. Number one, he is God. He is God and he is deserving of worship. Whether you or I want to give it to him, he is God. And number two, he is a creator. He's your creator. And he made you to be with him. And you know what? I can tell you this from experience. You will have a gap in your heart. You will have a hole there until you invite him in, because that is what you are designed for. You are designed to be with Jesus. And so I appeal to you today. Give Jesus a go. You're made for him. He is your God. And it's as simple as getting on your knees and asking him into your heart. And you do that, he'll be there and you will be complete. So who is Jesus? Who is this man that has so shaken the world? Well, I just wanted to share two things with you today. Firstly, he is God. He is the great God of heaven. He is deserving and worthy of worship, whether you and I give it to him or not. He is God. The second thing, and this is just as important, he is a creator. He made everything, but mostly he made you. And he created you for him. You are designed to be with Jesus. And if you don't have Jesus in your heart tonight, and I'll tell you what, you have a hole that can never be filled. You will always be unsatisfied because he created and made you to be with him. And if you want him with you tonight, it's as simple as asking him into your heart. A gentle little prayer. Jesus, come, be my Lord, be my God. May that be your experience. This man Jesus, he means a lot to me. That's why I'm doing this series, to be honest. It's because of Jesus, and I want to share Jesus with you. And there's this book that has changed my life. It's called The Desire of Ages. I would love it if you were to contact us. It's free. There's absolutely no obligations. I'll send it out to you. It's all about Jesus and his life. You'll love this book. So contact us. And by the way, if you live in Sydney, come to New Hope Adventist Church. I would love to meet you. I'm preaching there, to be honest. I'm preaching there most weeks, and I would love to meet you there. Wonderful worship, and we would enjoy fellowship with each other. My name's Lloyd Grolleman. I am the Aussie pastor, and you know what? I love you. That's why I did this series. I love you, but Jesus, my Jesus, he loves you a whole lot more. God bless. See you next time.